going to talk to you about how the apparel and footwear industries are really beginning to transform through partnerships and data transparency. So first, I'll give you a brief introduction of the Sustainable Apparel Coalition and our HIGG Index suite of tools, and how this helped with the solution of industry data-related problems. And then we'll get into our partnership with Schneider Electric and give you a little background on them, and how they helped us with the HIGG Index 2.0, and wrap it up with our vision for the future. So a lot of us don't really understand the magnitude of impact from the apparel and footwear industries. We all have a lot of clothes, and some of us have a lot of it. And it was the industry comprising of apparel, footwear, textiles, and luxury goods was worth $3.05 trillion in 2011 and was expected to grow. It also employs over 25 million people worldwide. And there are a lot of social issues with that. So for example, child labor. The fatter countries have more child labor, all the way to the tragic factory collapse in Bangladesh last year. And there are, of course, a lot of environmental impacts in the industry. So for example, a fourth of the US pesticide use is used for cotton, and fossil fuel-based materials have doubled in use over the last 15 years. Manufacturing and processing also has a lot of significant impacts. So for example, wastewater is a big one. And this wastewater treatment plant is serving 19 factories, dyeing factories in China. And the impact continues with consumer use. So Americans acquired about 1 billion garments just from Chinese factories last year. And of course, washing, drying, ironing has a lot of resource consumption. And the average American throws away about 68 pounds of textiles and apparel each year. So in 2009, Walmart and Patagonia teamed up and tried to create a sustainability assessment tool for Walmart's supply chain. Patagonia had already been working on a similar tool with the Outdoor Industry Association. And this partnership was successful enough that they wanted to create a larger sustainability assessment tool for the apparel and footwear industries. So later that year, they invited CEOs of several companies to get together and found the Sustainable Apparel Coalition, or the SAC. And so this industry-wide assessment tool could help with the problems of assessment fatigue and data inconsistencies before it was a real top-down approach where a lot of brands and retailers were really progressive in their environmental and social programs, and they would roll out their own assessments to their own supply chains. But in this industry, the supply chains overlap so much that manufacturers were just getting bombarded with audits and assessments. And so if we had an industry-wide kind of standard, this would help the data provision and data acquisition so much easier for everyone. And so the SAC has grown into a trade organization with 131 members. And these members represent the entire value chain and external interested parties. So here are our brand and retailer members. And equal partnership is one of SAC's core values. So like I was mentioning before, there was a very top-down approach, but now, instead of just applying a lot of pressure on specific parties of the supply chain, all of our members have the same amount of pressure to really provide data, be part of the SAC, and be transparent. And also, once you enter the SAC as a member, you're really entering a partnership. It's not like you become a member and you can go use our tools. Our members are really the owners. They create the tools, they tell us what will make them most usable, and they're really responsible for the success of these tools. Here are industry affiliates who are also members that we work with. Nonprofit, government, and academic institutions. So obviously there's a lot of knowledge here that is really valuable to the membership. And our manufacturer members. So that self-assessment tool came to life in 2011 and was called the HIGG Index. And the HIGG Index is actually a suite of tools to assess brands, facilities, products in the apparel, footwear, and home textiles industries. So yes, we have tools for brands, facilities, and products. So our brand and facility modules they're called modules, which are basically assessments. They're questionnaires, and each question contained within these modules are associated with a certain number of points. So depending on the answers, the user will get a score. And so the brand and facility modules assess both environmental and social labor practices and policies within brands and facility levels. And then our product tools assess the sustainability of materials and actual product designs. There are a few key concepts for the HIGG Index. First, it's a holistic self-assessment. So it covers a wide variety of impacts and is used by many different kinds of organizations in the industry. It measures both environmental and social labor impacts. It's a starting place for engagement and understanding. So it's used as a learning tool, and we provide a lot of guidance throughout the tools to help users understand how they can improve. And it also identifies opportunities for improvement. And it was recognized early on that we needed to leverage tools that were already out there in existence. So the Outdoor Industry Association already had an eco index. Nike had already created a material sustainability index. So, and the Global Social Compliance Program already had a great tool. So we didn't need to start from scratch. We could use what already existed and just build upon those to create something that would work for the whole industry. And so the HIGG Index tools will always be improving. We like to say, don't let perfect be the enemy of good enough. Let's get something out there, get it used, and then we can refine it and improve it to make it sure it's most valuable for the industry. So we have these brand and facility and product tools that are out there to assess those parties, and then from those results, we can really understand industry practices a lot more. And we can evaluate our tools based on that and make sure that they're focused on the right areas, and those are really capturing the hot spots. And then we can refine the tools, update the content, maybe make them more user-friendly, and re-release them to the industry. And so we really tried to drive positive change that way. So first I'm going to jump down to the product tools. These are really standalone because rather than assessing members of the value chain, they're assessing products and materials. And the two tools I'm about to introduce are completely available to the public. So the first one is the the Material Sustainability Index Data Explorer, or MSI Data Explorer. And the MSI was created by Nike in 2000, well, it was brought over to the SAC in 2011. We adopted it. And it's built upon LCI-derived data to score finished materials out of 100 points. And these materials are from cradle to gate. And the point of this tool, this Data Explorer, is to make all of the data behind these scores completely transparent to the public. There's no proprietary data in here. And also it serves as a platform to submit data. So I think there are 46 materials in there now. We need to vastly expand that. So anyone from the public, universities, material manufacturers can submit data to add new materials or to improve data quality of the materials that are already in there. Another tool we have is our Rapid Design module, Beta. So this is a prototype, and it's meant to educate designers and help them with their decision-making processes to give them directional guidance on the environmental impacts of their designs. And so it's meant to be used during the initial product creation phase. And so that MSI is also housed in this materials section, so they can select their materials and answer some questions about it. But then they also have to answer questions about manufacturing, about product use, packaging, and end of life for that product. And then they can save all of their individual designs and compare scores. And now we can dive into the brand and facility tools, which is really where the value chain can engage. So in 2011, when the HIGG Index was released, they were already pretty good tools. They had at least good content, but they were in Excel spreadsheets, and people didn't really like to use them, so they weren't very adopted. They weren't very transparent. They weren't easy to share this information, and so it wasn't being scaled on the level that we wanted it to be. And so we knew that we had to put it into a web-based platform and make it easier to share this data. And we needed to find a partner, a sustainability and software partner that could help take this HIGG Index to the next level. So we went through a pretty rigorous RFP process, and Schneider Electric showed a firm understanding of the goals and mission of the HIGG Index 2.0. And they have a superior functionality, a resource advisor, and we thought that this partnership could really help members with their understanding of their supply chains and their decision-making processes. So now I can turn it over to Aylin, and she'll introduce Schneider Electric and give you an idea of how they made the HIGG Index 2.0 a lot more adoptable, transparent, and scalable.
Thank you. So I first wanted to start out talking about who is Schneider Electric, because a lot of you probably have worked with Schneider Electric in some facet of what we do, but it's a really, really big company. And I think that if you, maybe in a lot of the ways that you've worked with us before, it might seem like a really surprising partnership with the SAC. But when it kind of comes down to what we do as a core business, it starts to make a bit more sense. So we're a very global company. We have presence throughout the world. We're not just a European company or a US company. We're really located everywhere. And our central mission is to provide solutions to the energy and climate change challenge that the world is facing. And so all of our products and services are around that. So we offer a lot of products and services in multiple industries, and things like infrastructure, industry, buildings, data center, residential areas, smart grid. I could go on, but I don't know all of them. So that's kind of an overview of who we are. Now, in order to provide these solutions to this huge challenge that the world is facing, it really kind of comes down to three things. You need to have a good strategy, and you need to be able to implement it on the ground. These two things need to be united, and technology is a really great facilitator to do that. So we have a suite of tools called Structureware that actually integrate at multiple levels of an enterprise and integrate together with each other. And actually our group, or my group, specifically works a lot with Resource Advisor, which is this corporate level view. And that might sound really high in the sky, but it's actually drawing upon millions of different data points in multiple key areas of sustainability and social labor and human rights. And just basically any data point you can think of it, we've probably been collecting it. And so we've been working with a lot of other Apparel members in other facets. So working on that strategy, working on how do you collect data, make sure it's shared in a safe way, that it's understandable, that and that you can actually get results out of it. So when we started to partner with the SAC, there was really two key core challenges that we had with this project. The first is, how do we actually create this tool and make sure that it's accomplishing these core issues that the SAC is trying to solve? So how do we make sure that people adopt it, that it's transparent, it facilitates data transparency, and that it's scalable? And then another really second pragmatic core challenge that we had is, how do we do this in 3.5 months? Because that was our timeline. So, sometimes you have to be pragmatic on how you accomplish this. So I wanted to share a couple of key values and just overall learnings that we had in this partnership and the launch of the HIGG Index 2.0, because I think it really does say a lot about how you should approach different partnerships with other people. So when we're talking about adoption, one really important thing that was important for the SAC and important for Schneider is to make sure that we really evaluated the different incentives that we had together as partners, to make sure that all of our incentives for creating the tool, for maintaining it, etc., are aligned, that there's mutually assured success. And that sounds really simple and really obvious, but I don't actually think it's often as implemented as it could be in a lot of these partnerships. Another aspect of this too is we really spent quite a lot of time at the beginning is determining who these key users were going to be and making sure we understood not only everybody in the supply chain who would be using it, but also kind of looking at the different spectrum of people. So some people are always just going to want to get in and get out. They're not going to really be looking for this as improvement. They're looking at it from compliance. Whereas others are actually really going to want to start to improve their operations by using this. So how do we make sure that we address that core spectrum of users? And then also, how do you keep it intuitive and interactive? Transparency was another huge key issue because we wanted to facilitate radical supply chain transparency. But the thing about that is it's a great idea but people won't do it unless they feel safe about sharing their data. So how do you keep things safe and still encourage radical transparency? And for scalability and for that pragmatic, 3.5-month timeline, keep it simple. That's the same overall experience with the HIGG tools too. We know that this will be continually improving, so we didn't want to design ourselves into a corner, make it too complicated design for something that maybe people don't really want. So keep it simple in the beginning, and then make it better and refine over time, and then also benchmark and improve over what we've done. So welcome to the HIGG Index 2.0. This is the landing page for everyone who would use this. And it looks pretty simple on the beginning, or at least I hope it does. And it should, because really the HIGG Index suite of tools is the star of the show. It should be, as everyone gets on, very apparent how to start taking these assessments and how to start sharing that information. What you don't see kind of behind those scenes is all of those principles of keeping it safe and keeping in order to be transparent. So there's multiple kind of gatekeepers along the way to make sure that if a user is there, they should be there. They should have the permissions to, post information about their company. Not everyone in a company not everyone in a company should be able to post information about that company. So there's a lot of aspects along the way that we considered in order for a person to get to this very simple page. Another part of this is interactivity. So, the HIGG Index is a great tool, but it's a bit complicated. There's a lot of different sections, a lot of different weighting and scores. It might not be intuitive at first, so we wanted to make sure that people are understanding it as they're going through. So even if their goal is really just to get in and get out, hopefully they're learning something along the way. So what you can't really see in this is that this is constantly updating as you're going through. This is a brand module. So you can always see where you're progressing along. So this person's only 5% or 3% done, but they can start to see their score totaling up as they go, not just in terms of the whole assessment, but if you look on the side, you can actually see how your score for that section and for the entire assessment is updating as you go along. So hopefully intuitively that means, okay, if I am a company that's only got 5 points, maybe it's probably worth my time to invest in an energy management system first, get those 30 points first, and then go into other things like LCA. So for data sharing, this is one of the key reasons why we wanted to do this, is to reduce that audit fatigue and actually get people information who want to use it. And we base a lot of this off of other similar data sharing models like LinkedIn. The sharing is bi-directional. Once you decide that someone should be able to view your information, you can view theirs and they can view yours. So we found that to be a really key criteria, is like facilities or manufacturers, they'll share their information, but they kind of start to wonder why you're not sharing yours with them. So it's also available in multiple languages too, and you can actually start to search for people within a directory in multiple ways. So by what type of product that they make, where they're located, what type of facility is. There's multiple ways that you can start to find people or invite people who aren't there. So you can invite people from the tool to start joining the tool. And then you can also start to see in the bottom what your supply chain is actually starting to look like. So for business intelligence, this is a really aspirational tool. It's not obviously apparent in the beginning what a good score is, essentially. So this is a way for people to take their assessments and then figure out, what does that actually mean among multiple criteria. So this is a quartile analysis. And you can actually view your assessment versus the anonymous SAC global average. So you might be able to see, okay, I have a 40, that's actually pretty good, but maybe I need to really improve on transportation. So you can start to see how you are, where you can drive improvements. And what's really interesting now is that all of your connections actually form a different group that you can analyze against. So you can view one connection versus a group of connections. So you can see how one cotton manufacturer is comparing to all cotton manufacturers. So that really starts to give people a lot of information to see how their value chain is performing. So where is the apparel industry right now? Apparel footwear, I should say. So this is some of the results that we've had from that first assessment. And what we think is really encouraging here is you can see among multiple categories, according to the HIGG Index results, there's actually a pretty good level of awareness and understanding of all of these issues. So people are at least understanding what the issues are that are very key in sustainability and social labor. When it comes to planning and managing, that's when things start to fall off. So they might be aware of these issues, but they're not yet managing and planning for them, and they're not demonstrating performance in a lot of these areas. So, so it's very positive signs of moving forward, but there's still work to go. So another aspect of this too is this is actually all the different connections geographically in the tool as of a couple months ago. So it would be more right now. So some really important things to note here is the bigger dots are usually, it's actually the dot gets bigger as they have more connections, but a lot of it still is a bit top down. It's brands seeking information from their supply chain. But what's really encouraging is that a global network is forming. You know, this is information access like they have not had before. And what's really exciting is that we're starting to see a global network of efficiency. Some of the reasons why we wanted to do this in the first place are starting to become apparent. So these brands and retailers, which are, again, the bigger dots, they're starting to understand and make massive strides in what their value chain is doing, what these key concepts are. And then you can see in some of these nodes that people are finally starting to be able to share these assessments to reduce some of that audit fatigue. So they've shared, just by clicking, connecting with someone else, they don't have to push information of a module or a different audit assessment. It's just there. They don't have to do anything else. Affiliates are starting to be able to access this information as well. And as you can see in a lot of these other accounts who haven't made a connection yet, they're making the first step to start using the tool. So maybe they'll never make a connection. Maybe they just want to assess themselves, or maybe they'll start to use it to reduce their audit fatigue. Really, it's there for both of those reasons. So where we currently are is at about 860 accounts, more than 1,500 users, 834 shared modules. A lot of these are in the facility environment, but there is a good representation of all the different modules as well. And 1,300 more and plus connections growing to this date. And that's actually one of the biggest percentage increases that we see in the tools. People start to connect more. Those percentages grow consistently every month. So that's where we currently are. I wanted to put it back on Julie to really talk about where we want to go from here.
All right, so next steps. So this year we're really focusing on wide adoption. So you just saw the stats of where we are now. It's something like 860 something accounts now. We want to have 10,000 accounts by October. So we're really pushing that. Verification is another big thing. We always ask here, you know, if this is a self-assessment, then how can we have a lot of confidence in those scores? So this year we're also focusing resources on writing verification protocols for these modules. We're creating new tools, creating retail modules, product design modules, which is like a more robust version of that RDM beta, and eventually get into product footprinting, which it would be less for designers and more for sustainability teams to quantify product impacts. And also their collective impact projects, which aren't necessarily tools, but they take findings from the tools and learn where weak spots are in the industry, and then our members can focus on that and try to make changes there. And eventually, we want to go consumer-facing with this information, and we don't know what this will look like yet. Could be a score on a hang tag or something you scan with your cell phone and you see information. We don't know yet, but in the next few years, that is in our plans. All right, so thank you. Are there any questions? Great question. There's actually, when you're in the tool, there's a big feedback button. And so that goes directly to staff. And there's a support button and a feedback button. So they can click on the support to ask for immediate questions for help, and then we can get in touch with them that way. Or the feedback is kind of stored, and that's used for eventual updates. And we consider all that feedback we did for the 2.0 also, and we can make content or usability changes based on that.